Got an ancient free engine? Let's get her running. Alright, as you can see, this thing is ancient. It's an ancient power washer, and it does not fire up. So, as you can tell, this is another carburetor video. So let's get at it. Get your screw off for your air filter. Boom, done. You got 3 number 8mm bolts that hold this filter housing on. Boom, your cover is now off. Now you have 2 10mm bolts that hold the carburetor on. Gas hose clamp out of the way a little bit to get to access to the bolt and zip them off. Bolt number 2, and off comes your carburetor. So disconnect the throttle. Usually just twist out like that. Watch your gas line as well. After you disconnect the gas line, you now have a free carburetor. And as you can see, the gasket is trashed. Would you look at that? Who would have guessed? Now, in this case, I do have Honda Bond and also liquid gasket. It is recommended to replace this, but I really don't care. This thing is so old. I just want to see if it fires up, so I'm going to get straight to the point. You've got to get this bolt. It's a 13mm. I already cranked it off for you. And now this is what we're looking at here. This is an ancient float. Very discolored. It's supposed to be divine white. This is pretty nasty looking. So yeah, it's not filled with fluid, which is a plus because I do have a little bit of fluid in there. So that is a good sign. It's not, the float is not flooded with fluid. So we can pull this pin out next, and then out comes the float. I pulled the pin, boom, out comes the float, and then the little needle is with it. Usually the culprit on these, if not, it's usually the lines here that need cleaning. That's your main jets, your idler jets. You want to check the bowl and see if there's any residue in there, like such as, you know, grit, sand, dirt, whatever. It looks pretty clean though, which is odd in these cases because usually they are filled with soot. But this one is clean, so it may be a bit of a mystery. So get your thin gauge trusty magnet wire and clean out those jets. Alright, like that. You can see the magnet wire has gone all the way through to the air fuel mixture chamber, so you know that jet is clean. Now this is the jet that usually wraps around into the cylindrical housing, and it's usually a pinhole jet that usually sits about at the bottom here, but I am not seeing that, probably because this thing is ancient. But in most cases, there's usually a jet there, and we just spray it out with carb cleaner. So in this case, since this jet bends around, we're just going to spray it out with carb cleaner. I'm seeing it come out of the air chamber, so that it is cleared. Now we clear our main jet. Oh yeah, nice and clear. The thing about these pins, this one doesn't have it. They usually have a brass little pin here that also helps it move up and down, and a lot of the times these little tips are rubber and get worn. It's very microscopic on this since it's such a small engine, but there is a small ring around this little needle tip, in which case you should replace it. But since this thing is so ancient, we are probably never going to find it. So we're just going to slap it together and see if it runs. Spray it with carb cleaner and then put your little needle back on, and your whole assembly fits in there just like that. Spray your little pin down with carb cleaner and slide her back in. Spray the float bowl out with carb cleaner and place her back on just like that. Now you're ready to put your nut back on and make sure it's tight, but don't over crank. Little 1/8 inch turn like that with a ratchet. Reinstall your throttle line just like that, and slip her on up like that. There are the 2 10mm bolts that hold the carburetor onto the body. You just want to give it a good 1/8 inch turn with a ratchet. Always start them by hand too, so you do not cross thread them or strip them. Reattach our air faceplate. We have a air line here that we have to reconnect, just like that. Reinstall your gas line. I usually just wedge it up somewhere above where the gas level is in the tank so it doesn't pour out, and now it will a little bit as you put it back on, and boom, done. Get your clamp set in place, flip that air cover back up, and crank down your 8mm bolts back to where they were. 1/8" turn should do it. Boom, done. All three. Reinstall that nasty air filter that needs to be swapped out and tighten your bolt back down. Nice 1/8" turn, boom, done. Alright, now we'll rip it and see if it fires up. First pull again. Cool.